see one greasy smudge on my trophies and you'll be banished to your room for all time,
screamed Uncle Matthew as Mary quivered in the corner. Matthew's yellow teeth clenched his unlit, soggy cigar so tightly it broke in half and fell to the floor.
Pick that up!
Pointing at the cigar, Matthew screamed and stormed into the kitchen as his trophies shook on the shelves. He lit a new cigar off the gas stove, took a puff, and disappeared into the house. Mary quietly picked up her bucket and washed the display case. Inside were a dozen third-place trophies from nasty Uncle Matthew's bowling league. A 3x5 picture frame sat next to each one. In every picture, Uncle Matthew was screaming so violently his eyes bulged. The TV blared away in the living room. Cousin Brandon was lying on the couch, smashing overflowing handfuls of raisins into his face. He chewed them until they were a heavy glop and spat them onto the floor as he changed channels. Mary quietly hummed a song she saved for when she was feeling the most blue. Her mother taught it to her before she died. It was called Freddie the Magic Fox. Some magic is in you. Freddie Fox knows that is true. Say the magic words, and he'll come rescue you. But the song didn't cheer Mary up at all. In fact, she felt even more rotten. Day after day of,
Mary, do the dishes! Mary, wash the dog! Mary!
had finally gotten to her. Tears of frustration welled in her eyes as Uncle Matthew stormed around upstairs. Her face burned with anger as Brandon turned up the TV to full blast for a car commercial. Mary clenched her hands into fists and shouted, "I've had it!" She kicked a shelf below the display case with her front toe. She jumped back, her toe exploding in pain. She sat on the carpet, wincing, waiting for the pain to subside. When it finally did, she saw what she had done to the shelf. "Oh, goodness!" she gasped. Mary had kicked the shelf so hard it unhinged a locked drawer, spilling out old papers onto the rug. She scrambled to the drawer to push them back in, her toe throbbing. Mary gathered the papers as fast as she could when an envelope caught her eye. She stopped cold. On the envelope was her name, written in beautiful cursive. She opened the envelope. When she lifted the flap, glitter shot into the air and shimmered, then immediately disappeared. Captivated, she pulled out the letter inside and read it. "Dear Mary, Daddy and I are sorry we sent you to mean Uncle Matthew, but it was the only way to keep you safe. By the time you find this, the magic will be restored in you. Speak this phrase, and you will be returned to our homeland, where you are a magical princess." "Me? A princess?" Mary gasped. She continued reading. "Say these words 3 times and be set free. Freddie Fox." Mary stood up nervously, grasping the letter tightly. She took a deep breath and cautiously spoke. "Freddie Fox." The light bulbs in the room flickered on and off. "Freddie Fox," she said louder. The carpet rumbled and the light bulbs exploded. "Freddie Fox!" she shouted. The room shook violently and cracks ran up the walls. Plaster fell from the ceiling. The room filled with a glittery, bright light. A shining yellow orb appeared in the middle of the room and grew to the size of a beach ball until it went pop. Out of the orb tumbled a fox. He somersaulted towards her and landed at her feet. He uncurled and knelt before her, holding a top hat in his hands that matched his plaid green suit, accented perfectly with a decorative cane.
"Your Royal Highness,"
he said respectfully. Mary gasped and fell backwards, astonished.
"Oh, there's nothing to be afraid of."
He laughed in a high sing-song voice. He winked and did a front flip, ending in a bow. "Is what the letter says true?" she stammered. Am I
a princess?"
Freddie Fox chuckled. "Most certainly." He did a backflip and landed on his knees gracefully.
"Why don't we do something about that toe?"
He pulled out his cane and waved it over Mary's toe. There was a sparkle and a tiny pop. Instantly, her toe healed. "Wow!" Mary yelped. "Thank you, Mr. Fox."
"Please," Freddie Fox cut in, "call me Freddie Fox." He winked and did another backflip.
Mary smiled, astonished.
There's no time to lose,
he said quickly.
The whole planet is waiting for you. We've been without our princess for far too long.
He did a sparkling pirouette. Then let's go, Mary shouted and tried to grab his hand. He instantly recoiled with a look of disgust.
No, that's not how it works,
he said, confused. Mary stared at him, puzzled.
Look,
he continued, speaking in a far gruffer voice than before. He pulled on his suit with his tiny paws.
Pardon the expression,
he muttered,
but Magic Town isn't for fucking chumps. It's hard. It's hard as fuck. It'll chew you up and shit you right the fuck out. We had to turn our preschools into morgues. And canceling the after-preschool programs sent thousands of toddlers into the streets, training them how to be super criminals.
Mary hung her head, disappointed. But I'm not tough at all, she said sadly.
I know,
he responded, doing a backflip resentfully.
And your people aren't going to like that.
He landed gracefully and continued.
We were at war for 11 years,
he explained, pacing around the room with his arms folded behind his back.
Your dad, our king, was a fair man, but he didn't play hardball with the Malsborians from Planet 238. When they invaded, we got completely fucking overrun.
Freddie Fox took a deep breath and shook his head.
A quarter of our population was killed. The rest of us wish we were killed. My own brother,
Freddie Fox trailed off without finishing the sentence.
And your parents, they were killed on TV.
Freddie suddenly did a sparkling backflip. His demeanor immediately changed, and he pulled his face into a shiny grin.
So here's the score,
he said, curling up next to Mary.
Your kingdom will need to know that you can fuck shit up and get messy. Are you afraid to get messy, Mary?
She shook her head no. She'd do anything to be a princess.
Perfect,
shouted Freddie Fox. He darted to the other side of the room, into the broken shelf. He scurried inside and came out carrying an old camcorder between his teeth. He dropped it on the floor and stood up.
Who do you hate more than anyone?
Freddie asked, checking the batteries on the camcorder. My nasty uncle and my lousy cousin, Mary shouted immediately.
Good,
Freddie said to himself as he turned the camera on.
We'll record you taking care of your family and I'll transport us back. We'll show everyone the video then. Boom, easy, done.
Taking care of them? Mary asked, confused.
Killing. You're gonna fucking kill them,
Freddie responded. I will not, Mary gasped. Freddie stared at her unimpressed.
Okay, your loss,
he muttered. He made a circle in the air with his cane. A magical swirl appeared in the air made out of stars.
Adios,
he said, climbing into it. Wait, Mary shouted. He stopped, looking theatrically curious, using his eyes to goad her further. Mary took a deep breath. I'll do it, she said quietly. Great, Freddie Fox cried, pulling himself out of the portal and back into the room.
Here's what we're gonna do,
he said with a laugh, pulling Mary close. As the TV blared and Uncle Matthew stormed around upstairs, Freddie told her his plan. Mary silently army-crawled down the hall, with Freddie Fox close behind, filming their little scheme. The camera had a fresh tape and full batteries. All systems were go. They snuck around the couch as Brandon howled with laughter at the TV, stuffing raisins into his glistening mouth. He broke wind loudly and laughed at himself. Mary and Freddie Fox crawled into the kitchen and stopped at the stove. Mary stood up and opened a drawer, pulling out a pair of scissors. Freddie Fox nodded at her and whispered,
Just like we planned.
Mary got on the floor and scuttled around to the back of the stove as Freddie Fox filmed. She crawled against the baseboards and found the gas line that went into the oven. Carefully, she snipped the rubber line. There was a dull whine as gas poured out of the hose. She grinned and crawled back out. Mary gave Freddie Fox a thumbs up, and he gave one back, smiling. She motioned over her shoulder for Freddie Fox to follow. They crawled out of the kitchen and into the living room. Mary paused. The TV was off. Brandon was nowhere to be seen. She looked around at Freddie Fox, terrified. He stared back, just as scared.
The fuck you think you're going?
Brandon's voice called out. Mary and Freddie Fox turned to face him. He stood in front of the door with his arms crossed, his massive flub spilling out under his Cleveland Browns t-shirt.
Fuck me, is that a fox in a suit?
Brandon said to himself incredulously. He stared at Mary, shocked and confused. She stared back, shivering with fear. Brandon snapped out of it. He drew a deep breath and began to shout, "Dad!" But before he could call for his dad, Freddie Fox darted across the room to the fireplace. He pulled an iron fire poker from the stand and threw it to Mary. She caught it and in one motion swung it above her shoulders and landed hard on Brandon's head. He froze, eyes and mouth wide open. A small knot of pink brain fizzed out of his wound. His eyes rolled up and he fell forward, stone dead. Mary dropped the fire poker and turned around to see Freddie Fox giving her the A-OK sign with his hand. He pointed at the camcorder. It caught everything.
Mary!
Called nasty Uncle Matthew from upstairs.
Come into the kitchen!
He shouted in a blood-curdling scream. His footsteps pounded down the stairs. Freddie Fox and Mary fled out the front door. Uncle Matthew came down the stairs and walked into the kitchen, unwrapping cellophane off a cigar.
Mary, my trophies! I need to see them!
He screamed insanely, pulling the rest of the cellophane off his cigar. He stopped at the stove and put the cigar in his mouth.
Brandon, where is Mary?
He cried as he turned the knob on the stove. The pilot clicked, sending a burst of static electric shock into the gas-filled kitchen. Mary and Freddie Fox stood in the street facing the house. Mary rested her hands on her hips, and Freddie Fox filmed when the ground rumbled and the house exploded. A fireball shot into the air as the walls burst and glass rained down onto the front lawn. In one ear-splitting second, the house was obliterated. Fire raged all the way down the driveway, starting Brandon's pickup truck on fire. "We did it!" shouted Mary. She and Freddie Fox jumped up and down, celebrating.
And the camera got it all!
Cried Freddie Fox happily. He did a little dance and swung his cane into the air. He swirled it as the portal opened. He got very serious and knelt down.
You truly have what it takes to be princess, Your Majesty,
he said with his head bowed. Mary blushed. "Thank you, Freddie Fox," she said earnestly. Freddie popped up with a wink.
After you, my...
Freddie Fox was cut short by a second explosion. The fire in the driveway caught the gas tank in Brandon's pickup truck. It split the car in half, sending its chrome bumper flying through the air. The bumper spun like a fan blade towards Freddie Fox. He tried to jump out of the way, but the end of it caught his throat. Freddie Fox went down, an arterial spurt arching in the air above him. He was bleeding out, and fast. "Freddie Fox!" cried Mary as she dropped to her knees and cradled his head. His eyes crazily stared at her in desperation. Her head spun, feeling completely helpless until she noticed his magic cane. She grabbed the cane to fix Freddie Fox, the same way he'd fixed her toe. When she waved it over him, his shirt caught on fire. The acrid stench of burnt fox hair caught her in the throat. She gagged. He flopped on the ground as the blood spray began to lose its strength. He stopped struggling as the blood slowed, then finally went still when it just trickled out. Faded sirens approached in the distance. Freddie Fox died in the street as Mary wept over him. She cried as the portal he spun into the air faded. It collapsed in on itself and disappeared with a pop. Mary shot up in panic. "The portal!" she shouted. "My kingdom!" she cried. She held her face in her hands, screaming hysterically, "I can never go home!" Hey, easy now," a soft voice said. The firefighter approached Mary slowly. "My kingdom!" Mary continued to shout. "Okay, easy, he said. She ran into his arms, sobbing. "Okay, it's okay," he comforted. Mary slowly calmed down as he patted her back gently. "Look," he said, "everything's gonna be fine. We are here to help you." He smiled, and she smiled back. "Everything is okay now." "Hey, Patterson, check this out," a voice called. The firefighter turned. 10 feet away, an overweight cop was holding the camcorder. "Is this your camera, little girl?" the obese cop asked as he put his eye against the finder. He hit play, and the tape started.